Thanks for joining us today as we take a look at how to add an edit button and use a list view to view a data file. In this tutorial, we're going to do several things. To print a list view, first you have to open and read your data file and then print the header line of the list view. So let's start there. To print a list view, you must print the header and then populate the list view with information from your data file in this case. And we use print fields to print the header, and you use the row 2 and column 2 where you want your list view to start in the top left corner. Then list, we want it to be 20 rows by 70 columns in size. Note the slash dividing them. This portion of the code is used in later lines to reference the list view, kind of like a title. And this is the headers, so you have to include that keyword, and the quote, colon. And here we insert 3 matrices that have information about the header: mat headings, mat widths, and mat field form. Notice that mat widths is numeric, while the other 2 are string. And they could be called anything, but I like to use the standard names for clarity. And we'll use read data statements to put that information in there. The mat headings includes the titles of each of the columns in your list view. In this case, we want name, email, and update to go with our data file that contains those 3 pieces of information. Your mat widths includes just the width of each one, so I want it 30, 30, and 10 to contain the information in name, email, and update. And notice that these are only the display widths of the columns and not the size of the actual information. Mat field forms is what contains the format specifications of the data. In this case, it's C50, C50, and C10. And these correspond to name, email, and update. And our data statement's accompanied by a read, which reads it into mat headings, mat widths, and mat field forms. And we already know that name and email are going to be 50 characters wide when we read them from the data file. I'm going to dim them both to 50. And I'm just going to dim our 3 matrices to 3 pieces each. Alright, before we can populate the list view, we have to read the information from our data file. So to do that, you open the file, and since we've looked at that before, I'm just going to do it quickly. Open number 1, colon. The name is email list2, which is the data file we created in our last tutorial. Record length, use an internal out-in relative. Out-in means that we can both put information in and get information out of our program. And next we need the read loop, and this is a standard read loop. Basically you do while file 1 equals 0, because we open file number 1, and this means that you do it while the file has been read correctly. Read number 1 using read form, which we need to add here, and you read the variables name $, email $, and update $. On error ignore. And so if the file reads correctly, then resize each of the matrices by adding 1, and read each of these variables for each record in the file into our 3 mats. In business rules, the rec internal function will return the record number of the file that you're reading at the moment, and we're going to use this in a minute. Keep track of which record in the file we've changed. Next, we change our 1-letter update into a complete word, instant, daily, or weekly. And then we end our original if statement, which says if it's read correctly. Then using the rec internal function, we put the record number of the record that was just read into our matrice called the record. And the loop will continue reading until all the records have been read. And of course, right before the loop, we want to set all our matrices to 0, just in case they had anything in them. And at the top, of course, we need to dim our name, email, and update variables. This is dimming the mat to 1 position to create it, and putting it to 50 characters. Now that we've read our data, we can populate the list view. And to populate the list view, you use a print field statement. And the string we used earlier of to list 2070 serves as a sort of title for your list view to refer to it in all the other statements about it. And in the populate line, we need to use a primary flag, the equal sign, and a secondary flag, the R. And then once again, we refer to our mat name dollar, mat email dollar, and mat update dollar. And that will print each of our matrices into our list view. Before we move on, let's take a closer look at the primary and secondary flags. There are 3 primary flags, equal, plus, and minus. Equal, like what we used, will replace any previous data that was populated in your list view. The plus sign will add to any previously populated data, and the minus sign will add data before any previously populated data. The secondary flags include R, C, L, and S. R loads 1 row at a time, while C loads 1 column at a time. L provides the F key, or enter interrupt, if the user presses up arrow or page up in the first field, or down arrow or page down in the last field. S means that a single click can activate an enter or F key indent instead of a double click. Now let's look back at our program. And to make our program functional, we're going to add some edit and quit buttons. To create buttons, we use print fields as well. And I'm going to put these at the bottom, at row 22, column 50, character centered of 8, skip the optional attribute, and then I'm going to set this one to be 1010, and the next one will be right next to it, row 22, column 60, and I'll set the next one to be 1011. And I'll call them edit and quit. And what we're going to wait for is some input from the list view to see which row the user has selected to edit, or if they just decide to quit. So refer to the list view again by its description, and this time we're going to read by row sub and select by select. And we're going to save that input fields as a numeric variable, selected row. And loop. Before we set the F key functions, let's take a look at the read and select types for list views. First, the read types. Row sub, like what we used, will return the subscript of the row that was selected. Row count will return the number of rows. Call count will return the number of columns established by the header arrays. Sort order provides a value of 0 for each unsorted column and gives the ascending sequence of column sorts that have occurred. If a column has been reversed or double sorted, its value will be negative. Sort order must be used with the selection type all. Displayed order will return the data in the order it's displayed in the list view and not in its original order. Headers is used to create the headers, and mask will read the display mask setting. And next there are several select types. Cell, which we used, will read 1 or more selected items. Cell 1 will only select one of the items. All will read all items in the entire list view, except not the headings. Cur we'll record the current cell or row number. Next, we'll record the cell that the cursor is going to next, but only if the user moves it using an arrow or a mouse click. And range specifies a portion of the list view to be input. And lastly, cell range is one type of range. See the wiki for more information on all of these. Now back in our program, we'll set the fkey function. So if they hit the quit button, it's easy. If fkey equals 1011, then go to done. And if they hit edit, else if to continue the multi-line if statement. If fkey equals 1010, then go to edit list view. Done and edit list view are both line labels we're about to create. And the if statement. Then I'm going to insert an end statement there so that when you run the program it doesn't accidentally ever go through to the following lines. And at the bottom, the easy one is line label done, and we'll simply close number 1. And if they hit the edit button, it'll take them to the line edit list view, which will let you change the current row. And I'm going to start this by printing new page to clear the list view and clean up our screen, and then just print a simple message for them to press enter when finished. We're going to use input fields to both print and input the row they selected and allow them to input new information to edit it, and then we're going to save it back to the file. So we'll start with input fields, and I'm going to put it at the bottom of the screen. The name field will be at row 22, column 4, and characters 50. And I'm going to use a new tool called the combo box to give them a limited set of options of instant, daily, or weekly for update $, since I don't want them to be able to enter anything and change our system of data entry. So it's going to be 10, combo 10. So the combo box format specification includes row 23 at column 54, a display length of 10 characters, the combo keyword, and a data length of 10 characters. I'm also going to insert another text input field for the email variable. So after all the format specifications, close your quote, add a colon, and then add the variables. And the information we're going to print there and then change is the name $ of selected row, which is the subscript of the row they chose to edit, the email $ of the same, and new update $. Next, let's set new update $. Simply our matrix update $ of selected row. Now to create the combo box, you use a print fields. This line is included to set up the combo box. So you use the format specifications to name your combo box, and then the equal sign functions much like the one we saw earlier in that it replaces the information in the combo box. You could also use plus or minus to either add extra options to the bottom of the list or add extra options to the top of the list. And the select keyword in this case allows them to only choose an option and not to type anything to enter it. And the options they can choose from will be found in mat dropdown. To set up the combo box information by creating mat dropdown, I'm going to first dim it to 3 since I know I have 3 options, and then add the data for instant, daily, and weekly. and I'm just going to read that into mat dropdown, which will become the options that it prints in my combo box dropdown menu. So together with the input fields and the print fields combo box, we'll print our editing screen. Now that the user has had a chance to enter the edited information, we need to set some new variables and then write it to our data file in the same place as the old record, the old incorrect record. And we're going to use read statement to do that by rereading the changed record and then rewriting it. So first, let's set the new variables. And since in our file the instant, daily, or weekly are saved as simply I, D, or W, I'm just going to choose the first letter of the word of new update to be saved to the file. And then I'm going to say let new name equal what they entered. And I'm going to do the same for new email and for new record. Next, I'm going to reread that same record from our data file. And this is when we use the internal function record and why we kept the record matrix. So read number 1 using email form, and the record equals new rec. And we're just going to use some junk variables because we're rereading the record that we already changed, so we don't even want that information. So blob 1, 2, and 3. And we're going to rewrite that same record that we just read using email form. And it's going to be our new variables, new name, new email, and new update, which the user just entered in our edit screen. I'm going to add email form, which we know by now is form C50, C50, and C1. Can remove the extra space. And we're going to have to dim the blah blahs because they're over 18. And we'll also have to dim new name and new email. And we've already closed the file. So we're done. Save, compile, and run. So when we run our program, you can see the list view and the edit and quit buttons. And if I just press quit, it goes back to the command console. So if I run it again, say I want to edit this, press edit. Let's make this Sammy. And here's our drop down. We'll make him daily. Press enter to save it. And to check our answers, we can run it again, and we can see our changes. That's all for now. Thank you for joining us, and next up is grids.